Chapter 1. The Golden City of Barefoot Men. The dust of Babylon was hot, heavy, and tasted distinctly of copper. It hung in the shimmering air like a golden haze, kicked up by the relentless passage of hooves, wheels, and sandaled feet. Tarkad pressed his back against the cool, shaded mud-brick wall of a narrow alleyway, pulling his tattered woolen cloak tightly around his shoulders. He kept his head low, his dark eyes scanning the crowded thoroughfare just a few paces from his hiding spot. Every time a tall figure in a clean, bleached linen tunic walked past, Tarkad's stomach did a painful, empty flip. He was hiding, and the shame of it burned hotter than the Babylonian sun. Earlier that morning, he had spotted Dabasir, the bony camel trader, marching down the market street with his usual long, purposeful strides. Tarkad owed Dabasir only 2 copper pieces, but to a young man who had not eaten a proper meal in 2 days, those 2 coppers might as well have been mountains of solid gold. Dabasir had a loud, booming voice and a notoriously short temper, and Tarkad had no desire to be publicly shamed, grabbed by the collar, and denounced as a worthless debtor in the middle of the crowded bazaar. He waited in the shadows until the crowd thickened, then slipped quietly out of the alley. The sun was climbing toward its peak, baking the great metropolis. Babylon was the undisputed wonder of the ancient world, a city of towering ziggurats that seemed to pierce the sky, lush hanging gardens that cascaded down stone terraces, and massive gates of solid brass. Yet, as Tarkad walked, he could not help but see 2 very different Babylons existing side by side. Down the center of the broad, paved streets rode the wealthy and the powerful. They sat proudly in noisy, gold-trimmed chariots, their horses adorned with colored leather and bronze bells that jingled with every stride. Merchants in rich purple robes from Tyre argued over prices, their fingers glittering with heavy rings of gold and lapis lazuli. But on either side of the road, in the dusty gutters and narrow paths, walked the other Babylon. These were the sandaled tradesmen, the weavers, the brickmakers, the potters, and the beggars. Most of them walked barefoot, their backs bent under the weight of their tools or products, their faces lined with deep lines of exhaustion. Among them marched long, miserable columns of enslaved water-carriers, carrying heavy goatskins filled to the brim from the Euphrates River, marching up to the terraced gardens of the wealthy. Tarkad looked down at his own dirty, bare feet. He was young, healthy, and capable of hard work. Yet his purse was as empty as his stomach. He had spent the last 2 years chasing quick schemes, borrowing a silver piece here and a copper piece there, always believing that tomorrow his luck would change and he would strike it rich. Now, tomorrow had arrived, and he had nothing to show for it but a list of angry creditors and a body that cried out for bread. Desperate for a distraction and perhaps a bit of shade, Tarkad walked toward the outer district where the craftsmen worked. He soon heard the familiar metallic ring of hammers, the scraping of wood, and the low, melodious strumming of a stringed instrument. He stepped into the open courtyard of Bansir, the chariot builder. Bansir, the chariot builder of Babylon, was thoroughly discouraged. From his seat upon the low mud wall surrounding his property, he gazed sadly at his simple, dusty home and the open workshop in which stood a partially completed chariot. The wood was good, the frame was solid, but it sat there unfinished. His wife frequently appeared at the open door of their home. Her furtive glances in his direction reminded him that the meal bag was almost empty, and that he should be at work finishing the chariot, hammering and hewing, polishing and painting, stretching taut the leather over the wheel rims, preparing it for delivery so he could collect the gold and silver from his wealthy customer. Nevertheless, his fat, muscular body sat stolidly upon the wall. His slow mind was struggling patiently with a problem for which he could find no answer. The hot, tropical sun, so typical of this valley of the Euphrates, beat down upon him mercilessly. Beads of perspiration formed upon his brow and trickled down unnoticed to lose themselves in the hairy jungle on his chest. Beyond his home towered the high terraced wall surrounding the king's palace. Nearby, cleaving the blue heavens, was the painted tower of the Temple of Bel. In the shadow of such grandeur was his simple home and many others far less neat and well cared for. Babylon was like this, a mixture of grandeur and squalor, of dazzling wealth and direst poverty, crowded together without plan or system within the protecting walls of the city. Behind him, had he cared to turn and look, the noisy chariots of the rich jostled and crowded aside the sandaled tradesmen as well as the barefooted beggars. Even the rich were forced to turn into the gutters to clear the way for the long lines of slave water carriers on the king's business, each bearing a heavy goatskin of water to be poured upon the hanging gardens. Banser was too engrossed in his own problem to hear or heed the confused hubbub of the busy city. It was the unexpected twanging of the strings from a familiar lyre that aroused him from his reverie. He turned and looked into the sensitive, smiling face of his best friend, Cobby, the musician. "May the gods bless you with great liberality, my good friend," began Cobby with an elaborate salute and a wide grin. "Yet, it does appear they have already been so generous you needest not to labor. I rejoice with you in your good fortune. More, I would even share it with you. Pray, from your purse which must be bulging else you would be busy in your shop, extract but 2 humble shekels and lend them to me until after the nobleman's feast this night. You will not miss them ere they are returned." "If I did have 2 shekels," Banser responded gloomily, "to no one could I lend them, not even to you, my best of friends, for they would be my fortune, my entire fortune." "No one lends his entire fortune, not even to his best friend." "What?" exclaimed Cobby with genuine surprise. "You have not 1 shekel in your purse, yet sit like a statue upon a wall. Why not complete that chariot? How else can you provide for your noble appetite? 'Tis not like you, my friend. Where is your endless energy? Does something distress you? Have the gods brought to you troubles?" "A torment from the gods it must be," Banser agreed, rubbing his face with his calloused hands. Tarkad stepped into the shadow of the awning, watching the 2 men. "You look like a man who has just watched his house burn down, Banser," Tarkad said, his voice raspy from thirst. Banser looked up, noticing Tarkad's pale face and tattered clothes, but he was too consumed by his own thoughts to comment on them. "In a way, Tarkad, it has. Or rather, the dream of my house has burned. I have been sitting here for hours, looking at this chariot. The wood is good, the brass fittings are strong, and the customer will pay me well when it is finished. Yet I cannot bring myself to pick up my hammer." "It began with a dream," Banser continued, his eyes looking off into the distance. "A senseless dream, in which I thought I was a man of means. From my belt hung a handsome purse, heavy with coins. There were shekels which I cast with careless freedom to the beggars. There were pieces of silver with which I did buy finery for my wife and whatever I did desire for myself. There were pieces of gold which made me feel assured of the future and unafraid to spend the silver. A glorious feeling of contentment was within me. You would not have known me for your hard-working friend. Nor would have known my wife, so free from wrinkles was her face and shining with happiness. She was again the smiling maiden of our early married days." "A pleasant dream, indeed," commented Cobby. "But why should such pleasant feelings as it aroused turn you into a glum statue upon the wall?" "Why, indeed? Because when I awoke and remembered how empty was my purse, a feeling of rebellion swept over me. Let us talk it over together, for, as the sailors do say, we ride in the same boat, we 3. As youngsters, we went together to the priests to learn wisdom. As young men, we shared each other's pleasures. As grown men, we have always been close friends. We have been contented subjects of our king. We have been satisfied to work long hours and spend our earnings freely. We have earned much coin in the years that have passed, yet to know the joys that come from wealth, we must dream about them. Bah! Are we more than dumb sheep? We live in the richest city in all the world," Banser continued, his voice rising in frustration. "The travelers do say none equals it in wealth. About us is much display of wealth, but of it we ourselves have not. After half a lifetime of hard labor you, my best of friends, hast an empty purse and sayest to me, 'May I borrow such a trifle as 2 shekels until after the nobleman's feast this night?' Then, what do I reply? Do I say, 'Here is my purse, its contents will I gladly share?' No, I admit that my purse is as empty as yours. What is the matter? Why cannot we acquire silver and gold, more than enough for food and robes? Consider also our sons," Banser urged, pointing toward the street. Are they not following in the footsteps of their fathers? Need they and their families and their sons' families live all their lives in the midst of such treasures of gold, and yet, like us, be content to banquet upon sour goat's milk and porridge? Never, in all the years of our friendship, didst you talk like this before, Banser. Cobbie was deeply puzzled, his fingers resting still on the lyre. Never in all those years did I think like this before, Banser admitted. From early dawn until darkness stopped me, I have labored to build the finest chariots any man could make, soft-heartedly hoping some day the gods would recognize my worthy deeds and bestow upon me great prosperity. This they have never done. At last, I realize this they will never do. Therefore, my heart is sad. I wish to be a man of means. I wish to own lands and cattle, to have fine robes and coins in my purse. I am willing to work for these things with all the strength in my back, with all the skill in my hands, with all the cunning in my mind, but I wish my labors to be fairly rewarded. What is the matter with us? Again I ask you, why cannot we have our just share of the good things so plentiful for those who have the gold with which to buy them? Would I knew an answer, Cobbie replied. No better than you am I satisfied. My earnings from my lyre are quickly gone. Often must I plan and scheme that my family be not hungry. Also, within my breast is a deep longing for a lyre large enough that it may truly sing the strains of music that do surge through my mind. With such an instrument could I make music finer than even the king has heard before. Such a lyre you should have, Banser said. No man in all Babylon could make it sing more sweetly, could make it sing so sweetly, not only the king but the gods themselves would be delighted. But how mayest you secure it while we both of us are as poor as the king's slaves? Listen to the bell. Here they come. He pointed to the long column of half-naked, sweating water-bearers plodding laboriously up the narrow, dusty street from the river. 5 abreast they marched, each bent under a heavy, wet goatskin of water. A fine figure of a man, he who does lead them. Cobbie indicated the wearer of the bell who marched in front without a load, his stride proud despite his position. A prominent man in his own country, 'tis easy to see. There are many good figures in the line, Banser agreed. As good men as we. Tall, blond men from the north, laughing black men from the south, little brown men from the nearer countries. All marching together from the river to the gardens, back and forth, day after day, year after year. Naught of happiness to look forward to. Beds of straw upon which to sleep, hard grain porridge to eat. Pity the poor brutes, Cobbie. Pity them I do, Cobbie said softly. Yet you do make me see how little better off are we, free men though we call ourselves. That is truth, Cobbie, unpleasant thought though it be, Banser muttered. We do not wish to go on year after year living slavish lives. Working, working, working. Getting nowhere. Tarkad sat down heavily on a block of unused cedar. The raw, gnawing hunger in his stomach made his voice sharp and bitter. You talk of empty purses and lack of luxury, but at least you have homes, tools, and the respect of the community. I spent my morning ducking into doorways to avoid Dabasser. My stomach is a hollow pit. I have not eaten anything today but 2 small, dry figs which I managed to reach over a garden wall. I would work for anyone who would pay me a single copper today, but there is no work to be found that pays enough to buy both bread and freedom. He looked at his friends, his eyes flashing. We are exactly like the water-bearers. We carry the weight of Babylon on our shoulders, but the water we bring only quenches the thirst of others. We build the chariots, we play the music, we write the records, but the gold always ends up in the hands of the masters. Banser stopped his pacing and looked at Tarkad. Exactly. But why? Why do some men have gold flowing into their chests like the Euphrates, while we must bargain for every crust of barley bread? Is it because they are favored by the gods? Or is there a secret to acquiring wealth that we simply do not know? Might we not find out how others acquire gold and do as they do? Cobbie inquired, plucking a single, clear note on his lyre. Perhaps there is some secret we might learn if we but sought from those who knew. This very day, suggested Cobbie, I did pass our old friend, Arkad, riding in his golden chariot. This I will say, he did not look over my humble head as many in his station might consider his right. Instead, he did wave his hand that all onlookers might see him pay greetings and bestow his smile of friendship upon Kabi, the musician. He is claimed to be the richest man in all Babylon. Banser mused, his brow furrowing. So rich the king is said to seek his golden aid in affairs of the treasury. Kabi replied. So rich, Banser interrupted. I fear if I should meet him in the darkness of the night, I should lay my hands upon his fat wallet. Nonsense, reproved Kabi. A man's wealth is not in the purse he carries. A fat purse quickly empties if there be no golden stream to refill it. Arkad has an income that constantly keeps his purse full, no matter how liberally he spends. Income, that is the thing, ejaculated Banser. I wish an income that will keep flowing into my purse whether I sit upon the wall or travel to far lands. Arkad must know how a man can make an income for himself. Dost suppose it is something he could make clear to a mind as slow as mine? Methinks he did teach his knowledge to his son, no macer. Kabi responded. Did he not go to Nineveh and, so it is told at the inn, become, without aid from his father, one of the richest men in that city? Kabi, you bringest to me a rare thought. A new light gleamed in Banser's eyes. It costs nothing to ask wise advice from a good friend, and Arkad was always that. Never mind though our purses be as empty as the falcon's nest of a year ago. Let that not detain us. We are weary of being without gold in the midst of plenty. We wish to become men of means. Come, let us go to Arkad and ask how we, also, may acquire incomes for ourselves. You speakest with true inspiration, Banser, Kabi said, his voice rising with excitement. You bringeth to my mind a new understanding. You makest me to realize the reason why we have never found any measure of wealth. We never sought it. You have labored patiently to build the staunchest chariots in Babylon. To that purpose was devoted your best endeavors. Therefore, at it you did succeed. I strove to become a skillful lyre player. And at it I did succeed. In those things toward which we exerted our best endeavors we succeeded. Kabi continued. The gods were content to let us continue thus. Now, at last, we see a light, bright like that from the rising sun. It biddeth us to learn more that we may prosper more. With a new understanding we shall find honorable ways to accomplish our desires. Let us go to Arkad this very day, Banser urged, stepping down from the wall. Also, let us ask other friends of our boyhood days, who have fared no better than ourselves, to join us that they, too, may share in his wisdom. You wert ever thus thoughtful of your friends, Banser. Therefore hast you many friends, Kabi said. It shall be as you sayest. We go this day and take them with us. Tarkat stood up, adjusting his threadbare cloak. While the spark of determination had touched his friends, his immediate needs were far more pressing. He could not wait to learn how to build a grand estate over the coming years. His stomach was crying out now, and Dabasir was still out there in the streets. You go to Arkad, Tarkat said, his voice quiet but resolute. He is indeed a great man, and his wisdom will serve you well. But my needs are immediate. I cannot listen to lectures on wealth when I have no bread for tonight. I am going to see Mathan. Banser frowned, looking at the young man. Mathan? The gold lender? He is a cold man, Tarkat. He weighs every copper on his brass scales as if it were his own heart. He will not give you gold out of the goodness of his soul. I do not expect him to. Tarkat replied, his eyes narrowing. Mathan sees the flow of all the gold in Babylon. He knows who is rising and who is falling. I am going to ask him for a loan, not to buy bread, but to start a trade. I have a strong back and a quick mind. If he refuses me, I will ask him how a man without gold can begin to earn it. If he is as wise as they say, he will recognize a willing worker. Kabi let out a dry, skeptical laugh. A debtor asking a lender for financial wisdom? Mathan will throw you out of his shop, Tarkat. He deals in gold, not in the dreams of starving boys. Perhaps, Tarkat said, stepping out from the shade of the workshop into the blinding glare of the afternoon sun. But staying here in the dust and complaining will not fill my purse or my stomach. I would rather be thrown out of a gold shop while trying to learn, than starve in an alleyway doing nothing. With those words, Tarkad turned and walked away, his steps firm despite his hunger. Behind him, the sound of Kabi's lyre began to play a new tune, no longer sad and drifting, but hopeful, rising above the dusty streets of Babylon as Bansir and Kabi prepared to seek out the richest man in the city. Tarkad made his way back toward the bustling center of the city, his mind set on the shop of Mathan the gold lender. He knew the risks. He knew that Mathan might turn him away, or worse, report him to his creditors. But as he pushed through the crowds of sandaled merchants and barefoot laborers, he felt a strange sense of clarity. The old ways of borrowing and hoping for luck were finished. If he was to survive in this golden city, he had to learn the rules of the game. And he would start with the man who held the scales. Chapter 2. The Scribe's Legacy. The shop of Mathan the gold lender was cool, quiet, and smelled of dried lavender and expensive oils. Heavy wool carpets from Persia covered the stone floor, muffling the sounds of the busy city outside. On a polished wooden table sat a set of delicate brass scales, used to weigh the gold and silver coins of Babylon. Behind the table sat Mathan, slowly sipping a cup of pomegranate juice. Tarkad stepped inside, his heart pounding. The contrast between his dirty, sweat-stained tunic and the luxury of the shop made him feel small. Mathan looked up, his sharp eyes taking in Tarkad's appearance in an instant. He did not look angry, but his face was unreadable. "Welcome, young man. How may the scales of Mathan serve you today?" Tarkad swallowed hard and approached the table. "I come to ask for a loan, Mathan. Just 3 silver pieces. I am a willing worker, and I will repay you with interest as soon as I find a trade." Mathan set his cup down. 3 silver pieces is a small sum to a rich man, but a large sum to a lender who must guard his treasures. "Tell me, what security do you bring? Do you have land, or sheep, or a house?" "I have nothing," Tarkad admitted, looking at the floor. "Only my strength and my word." Mathan shook his head gently. "If a wild wind blows your word away, what will my scales weigh in its place? Lending is not charity, young man. I lend to help men multiply their gold, not to pay for their daily bread. To lend to a man with no plan and no security is like pouring water onto the dry desert sand. It disappears, and nothing grows." Tarkad felt a wave of despair. "Then how is a man to start? If I have no gold, and no one will lend to me, must I remain a beggar forever?" "It is a fair question." A voice spoke from the shadows near the back of the shop. Tarkad turned in surprise. Sitting on a low bench was a man in his late 30s, wearing a simple but finely woven blue tunic. His eyes were bright and full of intelligence, and he carried himself with the quiet confidence of someone who had achieved great things. It was Arkad, the man widely known as the richest citizen in all of Babylon. Mathan bowed his head respectfully. "Arkad, I did not know you were finished reviewing the contract for the brick kilns." "I was," Arkad said, standing up and walking toward Tarkad. He looked at the young man, his gaze warm but evaluating. "I heard your plea, young friend. You asked Mathan for silver to buy a trade, but your empty pockets show that you do not yet know how to manage even the coppers you find. Let me tell you a story. When I was young, I looked around me. I saw all the good things that could bring happiness and contentment. I realized that wealth made all of these things much more powerful. Wealth is power. With wealth, many things become possible. You can decorate your home with the richest furnishings. You can sail across distant seas. You can feast on the delicacies of faraway lands. You can buy ornaments from the gold worker and the stone polisher. You can even build mighty temples for the gods. You can do all these things, and many more. These things delight the senses and deeply satisfy the soul. When I realized all of this, I made a decision. I decided that I would claim my share of the good things in life. I refused to be someone who just stands on the sidelines, enviously watching others enjoy themselves. I refused to be satisfied with wearing the cheapest clothes that looked barely respectable. I refused to settle for the life of a poor man. Instead, I decided to make myself a guest at this banquet of good things. I was the son of a humble merchant. I came from a large family with no hope of an inheritance. I was not blessed with any superior intelligence or special talents. I decided that achieving my desires would require two things: time and study. As for time, all people have plenty of it. Every single one of you has let enough time slip by to have made yourselves wealthy. Yet you have nothing to show for it except your good families, which you can be justly proud of. As for study, do you remember what our wise teacher taught us? He said that learning comes in two forms. The first form is the knowledge we learn and memorize, and the second form is the training that teaches us how to discover the things we do not know. Therefore, I decided to find out exactly how a person could accumulate wealth. Once I found the answer, I made it my personal mission to do it, and to do it well. I found a job working as a scribe in the Hall of Records. Every day, I worked long hours carving on clay tablets. I labored week after week, and month after month. But I had absolutely nothing to show for all my earnings. Food, clothing, offerings to the gods, and other things I can't even remember simply swallowed up everything I made. But my determination never faded. Then, one day, Algamish the moneylender came to the house of the city master. He ordered a copy of the 9th law. He told me, "I need this in 2 days. If the job is finished by then, I will give you 2 copper coins." So I worked incredibly hard, but the law was very long. When Algamish returned, the job was still unfinished. He was furious. If I had been his slave, he would have beaten me. But I knew the city master would not let him hurt me, so I wasn't afraid. I looked at him and said, "Algamish, you are a very wealthy man. Tell me how I can become rich too. In return, I will carve on this clay all night long. By the time the sun rises, it will be completely finished." He smiled at me and replied, "You are a bold rascal, but we have a deal." I carved all through the night. My back ached, and the smell of the burning wick gave me a terrible headache. My eyes hurt so much I could barely see. But when he returned at sunrise, the clay tablets were completely finished. "Now," I said, "tell me what you promised." "You have kept your end of the bargain, my son," he said to me kindly. "And I am ready to keep mine. I will tell you the things you want to know. I am growing old, and an old tongue loves to talk. When a young person comes to an older one for advice, he receives the wisdom of many years. Pay close attention to my words. If you don't, you will fail to grasp the truth I am about to share. I found the road to wealth when I decided that a part of all I earned was mine to keep. And so will you." Then he continued to look at me with a piercing glance, but he said no more. "Is that all?" I asked. "That was enough to change the heart of a sheepherder into the heart of a money-lender," he replied. "But all I earn is mine to keep, isn't it?" I demanded. "Far from it," he replied. "Do you not pay the garment maker? Do you not pay the sandal maker? Do you not pay for the things you eat? Can you live in Babylon without spending? What do you have to show for your earnings of the past month? What about the past year? Fool! You pay everyone but yourself. You might as well be a slave, working just for what your master gives you to eat and wear. If you kept 1/10 of all you earn for yourself, how much would you have in 10 years? My knowledge of numbers did not fail me. I answered, "As much as I earn in 1 year." "You speak only half the truth," he retorted. "Every gold piece you save becomes a slave to work for you. Every copper it earns is its child that can also earn for you. If you want to become wealthy, what you save must earn money. Its children must also earn money. Then they will all help to give you the abundance you crave. A part of all you earn is yours to keep. It should be no less than 1/10, no matter how little you earn. It can be more if you can afford it. Pay yourself first. Do not buy more from the clothes maker and the sandal maker than you can afford out of the rest. Wealth, like a tree, grows from a tiny seed. The first copper you save is the seed from which your tree of wealth will grow. The sooner you plant that seed, the sooner the tree will grow. The more faithfully you nourish and water that tree with consistent savings, the sooner you can bask in contentment beneath its shade." Saying this, he took his clay tablets and went away. I thought a lot about what he told me. It seemed reasonable, so I decided to try it. Each time I was paid, I took one out of every 10 copper pieces and hid it away. Strange as it may seem, I was not any shorter on funds than before. I managed to get along without that money. But as my hoard began to grow, I was often tempted. I wanted to spend it on the good things the merchants displayed, but I wisely held back. A full year after Algamish had gone, he returned and spoke to me. "Son, have you paid yourself at least 1/10 of all you earned for the past year?" I answered proudly, "Yes, master, I have." "That is good," he answered, beaming upon me. "And what have you done with it?" "I gave it to Asmer, the brickmaker. He told me he was traveling over the far seas. He said he would buy the rare jewels of the Phoenicians for me in Tyre. When he returns, we will sell these at high prices and divide the earnings." "Every fool must learn," he growled. "But why trust a brickmaker's knowledge about jewels? Would you go to the breadmaker to ask about the stars? Your savings are gone, young man. You have yanked your wealth tree up by the roots. But plant another one and try again. Next time, if you want advice about jewels, go to the jewel merchant. Anyone who takes advice about his savings from someone inexperienced will pay with those very savings." And it happened exactly as he said. The Phoenicians sold Asmer worthless bits of glass that looked like gems. But I started saving every 10th copper again. 12 months later, Algamish came back and spoke to me. "What progress have you made since I last saw you?" "I have paid myself faithfully," I replied. "I entrusted my savings to Adger the shield maker to buy bronze. Every 4th month, he pays me rental interest." "That is good. And what do you do with the rental interest?" "I throw a great feast with honey, fine wine, and spiced cake. I also bought myself a scarlet tunic. Someday, I will buy a young donkey to ride." Algamish laughed at this. "You are eating the children of your savings. How do you expect them to work for you then? And how can they have children that will also work for you? First, get yourself an army of golden slaves. After that, you can enjoy many rich banquets without any regret." I did not see him again for 2 years. When he finally returned, he was a very old man. He said to me, "Arkad, have you achieved the wealth you dreamed of yet?" And I answered, "Not yet all that I desire. But I have some, and it earns more money, and its earnings earn even more." "And do you still take the advice of brickmakers?" "About brickmaking, they give good advice," I retorted. Algamish smiled. "Arkad, you have learned your lessons well. First, you learn to live on less than you earn. Next, you learn to seek advice only from those who are qualified. Finally, you have learned to make gold work for you. Because of this, I am making you my partner to look after my lands in Nippur." I went to Nippur and took charge of his properties. When Algamish passed away, I shared in his estate under the law. Opportunity is a proud goddess. She wastes no time with those who are unprepared. Arkad looked at Tarkad, who was listening in silence. "Some men speak of willpower," Arkad continued. "Willpower is simply an unflinching purpose. It is the determination to fulfill a task you have set for yourself. If I set a task for myself, no matter how small, I will see it through. Suppose I say to myself, for 100 days, as I walk across the bridge into the city, I will pick a pebble from the road and throw it into the stream. If I say it, I will do it. If I cross the bridge on the 7th day and forget, I will retrace my steps and cast that single pebble. I would never say, tomorrow I will throw 2 pebbles, and that will be just as good. On the 20th day, I will not say, Arkad, this is useless. Just throw a handful right now. No, when I set a task for myself, I finish it. Because of this, I am careful not to start difficult or impractical tasks. So, Tarkad, do not ask Mathan for silver to spend. Ask yourself if you have the willpower to keep a part of all you earn. A part of all you earn is yours to keep. Tarkad felt a new light in his mind. He looked at Arkad, then at Mathan, and bowed. I have no security to borrow silver, Arkad. But I have a shovel. If you have labor, I will work, and I will keep 1/10. Come to my office at sunrise, Arkad said with a warm smile. We are digging a new canal, and a willing worker is always welcome.